3 billion years ago, we existed as minuscule atoms, floating in the vast primordial environment of Earth. Fast forward to approximately 6 million years ago, the first hominids emerged, primates that are part of the family tree leading to modern humans. Around 1.9 million years ago, Homo erectus became the first human species to leave Africa, spreading across other parts of the world. They possessed larger brains than their primate ancestors. Approximately 400,000 years ago, the first evidence of Neanderthals appeared. These early humans were adapted to the frigid environments of Europe and Western Asia, showcasing distinctively human-like features. Eventually, Homo sapiens, the only surviving species of the hominin lineage, emerged. But how did Homo sapiens achieve global dominance? The answer lies in the rise of civilization. Civilization began in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. In the Sumerian city of Uruk, people transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming cereal grains like wheat and barley. However, processing these grains into food was labor-intensive. Early Sumerians used a hand mill, a tool made of two stones, to crush grains into flour. This flour was then stored for future use, marking the beginning of agriculture. This innovation meant humans no longer relied on hunting animals or foraging but instead created their food supply through ingenuity. This shift allowed Uruk to flourish, growing into a bustling city with over 50,000 residents. Yet, this transformation also altered human biology. The average height of men decreased from 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 3 inches, while women shrank from 5 feet 3 inches to 5. Humans, once physically robust and athletic, became smaller and more sedentary, tied to farming and fixed settlements. Around 3000 BCE, according to legend, King Gilgamesh ruled as a Sumerian king. His story is immortalized in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known literary works. The poem chronicles his quest for immortality and his encounter with Utnapishtim, who recounts a great flood meant to destroy the world. In the poem's conclusion, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh, "Life, which you look for, you will never find. For when the gods created man, they let death be his share and life withheld in their own hands." By the end of the 3000s BCE, the Akkadians had overthrown the Sumerians, with Sargon the Great conquering all of Sumer. Meanwhile, in the Indus Valley, modern-day Pakistan, a new civilization emerged between 3300 and 1300 BCE. The Indus Valley civilization is notable for its advanced urban planning, particularly its sophisticated toilet systems. These toilets featured seats and chutes connected to underground drainage networks. Sewage was transported away through covered drains and treated outside city limits, promoting hygiene and preventing disease. While the Indus Valley prioritized cleanliness, Egypt was more preoccupied with building monumental pyramids. Ancient Egyptian beliefs centered on the idea that when a pharaoh died, his spirit would continue to exist in the afterlife. To prepare for this journey, pharaohs were buried in pyramids filled with offerings and treasures, ensuring their eternal rule and worship. These grand structures served as symbols of the pharaoh's divine authority and legacy. Ancient Egyptians believed that when a pharaoh passed away, his spirit would continue to exist in the afterlife, ruling for eternity and being venerated by the living. To ensure a successful journey to the afterlife, the pharaoh's body was carefully mummified, a process thought to preserve his physical form. The pyramid served as grand tombs filled with offerings and treasures, providing the resources a pharaoh would need in the afterlife. Immortality and perpetual worship were priorities for every pharaoh, driving their ambition to construct elaborate pyramids as eternal monuments. This tradition began with Pharaoh Djoser, 2667 to 2648 BCE, who built the step pyramid at Saqqara. He was succeeded by Sneferu, 2613 to 2589 BCE, who constructed several pyramids, including the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. The most famous of these efforts came under Pharaoh Khufu, 2589 to 2566 BCE, who oversaw the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, a labor-intensive project that took 20 years and remains a marvel of engineering. Following Khufu, pharaohs Khafra and Menkaure built the slightly smaller second and third pyramids of Giza, respectively. Meanwhile, in China around 2100 BCE, the first dynasty was emerging. Similar to the Mesopotamians, the Chinese relied heavily on agriculture, cultivating crops like rice, wheat, and barley. However, frequent flooding of the Yellow River caused devastation, destroying crops, and leading to widespread famine. According to legend, Yu the Great devoted himself to solving this problem. Yu spent years traveling along the Yellow River, devising ways to control its waters. By constructing levees and dikes, he successfully regulated the river's flow, preventing further floods. After 13 years of relentless effort, Yu's work transformed the land, earning him the adoration of his people. He became a symbol of merit-based leadership, establishing the Xia dynasty, the first in Chinese history. Although the historical accuracy of this tale is debated, it introduced the principle that power should be granted to those who prove themselves capable, an idea that influenced governance for centuries. In Mesopotamia, around 1772 BCE, King Hammurabi of Babylon laid the foundation for the legal systems we know today. He commissioned a 7-foot-tall, 2-foot-wide stone stele inscribed with 282 laws that governed every aspect of Babylonian life. These laws included directives like Law 1, which stipulated that an accuser who fails to prove a charge of murder must be executed, and the infamous Law 196, prescribing an eye for an eye. Other laws, such as Law 199, required compensation for harming a slave, albeit valuing slaves less than free citizens. Hammurabi's code established a society based on strict laws and a rigid social hierarchy. Every individual's worth was tied to their social class, with nobles valued more than commoners, and commoners valued more than slaves. This caste-like system left no illusions of equality but created order and reinforced class distinctions, a structure echoed throughout history. While Mesopotamia advanced its legal framework, a lesser-known civilization was rising in modern-day Turkey. The Hittite Empire, under the charismatic leadership of Laba-Arnasi, 1680 to 1650 BCE, united disparate Hittite city-states into a cohesive empire. Laba-Arnasi was both a skilled military leader and a shrewd diplomat. He led his army from city to city, forging alliances, and conquering neighbors, consolidating power. His ability to win the loyalty of his people through both strength and diplomacy laid the foundation for the Hittite Empire's prosperity and expansion. Eventually, Laba-Arnasi became the ruler of all the Hittite city-states, formally establishing the Hittite Empire. Known for his fairness and just rule, he earned the admiration and loyalty of his people. Under his leadership, the Hittites flourished, expanding their territory to the borders of Egypt. Meanwhile, in modern-day Greece, a collection of city-states emerged on the European continent. Mycenaean Greece, 1600 to 1100 BCE, was characterized by an elite warrior society and a network of palace-centered states. These states operated within strict hierarchical political, social, and economic structures, with kings at the top of the system. However, unlike unified civilizations, each city-state functioned independently. A city-state consisted of a city and its surrounding territory forming a sovereign entity. Prominent city-states such as Troy, Mycenae, and Pylos began to rise during this period. The first evidence of Greek written language, known as Linear B, also emerged, marking the earliest Indo-European Greek records we have today. Back in Egypt, another type of pyramid was being established, the social pyramid, mirroring the Great Pyramid of Giza in its structure. At the broad base were the peasants and slaves, who performed manual labor, working the lands to produce food for Egypt. When the farming season ended, they were tasked with building massive projects such as the pyramids. The soldiers came next, dedicating their lives to protecting Egypt and launching preemptive strikes against enemies. Near the top of the social structure were the bureaucrats, high-ranking officials responsible for managing the empire's administration. Priests maintained temples to honor the gods, while nobles governed specific regions and ensured order. At the very top was the pharaoh, the supreme ruler and mediator between gods and humans. The entire social hierarchy existed to serve the pharaoh. Farmers paid taxes to him, artisans crafted unique works for his use, merchants supplied him with goods, and scribes chronicled his life. Soldiers defended his empire, and bureaucrats handled tasks he could not. Upon death, the pharaoh was entombed in a pyramid, symbolizing his eternal rule over the Egyptian empire. Pharaoh Ramses II, 1279 to 1213 BCE, exemplified the achievements of this system. He commissioned monumental works such as the temples of Abu Simbel, Ramesseum, and Karnak. Ramses also expanded Egypt's borders, reclaiming territories lost by previous rulers, though he could not regain the land occupied by the Hittite Empire, ruled at the time by Muwatalli II. Muwatalli II, 1295 to 1272 BCE, was infamous for launching attacks on his Egyptian neighbors, following the expansionist example of lava RNAs. His ambition was to unite the known world under Hittite rule. However, Pharaoh Ramses II had reached his limit. While previous pharaohs had attempted to stop the Hittites, Ramses knew that for his empire to thrive, he needed to retaliate decisively. His target was the strategic city of Kadesh. Ramses led 4 divisions of 20,000 soldiers into battle, riding confidently on his chariot with the aim of defeating Muwatalli. However, the Hittites, forewarned of the invasion through espionage, fortified Kadesh with 40,000 troops. As the battle loomed, Ramses attempted a strategic maneuver, splitting his forces to draw Muwatalli out of the city. Unfortunately for Ramses, this tactic left his army vulnerable. The Hittites had the opportunity to encircle the divided Egyptian forces by the river and claim a decisive victory. Yet, for reasons that remain unclear, they failed to capitalize on their advantage. The battle concluded in a stalemate, with neither side achieving a clear victory. Following the Battle of Kadesh, both sides recognized the futility of continued conflict. They agreed that peace and cooperation would serve their civilizations better. After Muwatalli's death, Hattusili III ascended to the Hittite throne. In 1258 BCE, through diplomatic messengers, Ramses II and Hattusili signed the first recorded peace treaty in history. The treaty stated, "Ramses, the great king of Egypt, shall never attack the land of Hutti to seize it, and Hattusili, the great king of Hutti, shall never attack the land of Egypt to claim it." This peace ushered in a period of mutual respect and collaboration between the former adversaries. The Hittites, known for their expertise in metalworking, shared their techniques for crafting advanced weapons and tools with the Egyptians. In return, the Egyptians, renowned for their agricultural mastery, provided their knowledge to the Hittites. Trade flourished, benefiting both civilizations and demonstrating how peace can lead to prosperity. This harmonious relationship lasted until around 1200 BCE, when the Hittite Empire succumbed to relentless attacks by the Sea peoples, ultimately fading into obscurity. Meanwhile, across the ocean in modern-day Mexico, the Olmec civilization, 1200 to 400 BCE, was taking shape, considered the mother civilization of Native American cultures. Unfortunately, much about the Olmecs remains unknown due to their undeciphered hieroglyphic writing system. Among their most iconic legacies are 17 colossal stone heads, which, in Mesoamerican belief, encapsulated an individual's emotions, experiences, and soul. Although we lack the names of their leaders, unlike figures such as Ramses or Hammurabi, the presence of these stone heads ensures their immortality in history, leaving room for future discoveries. In China, the Joe Dynasty, 1046 to 256 BCE, was rising to power following the decline of the Shang dynasty. Central to the Zhou's rule was the concept of the mandate of heaven, which established four key principles of dynastic governance. 1. Heaven grants the emperor the divine right to rule. 2. There can only be one emperor under heaven at a time. 3. The emperor's virtue determines his legitimacy. And 4. No dynasty holds permanent authority, as the mandate could be revoked. Natural disasters like droughts, famines, floods, and earthquakes were seen as signs that a dynasty had lost heaven's favor, paving the way for its downfall. This cycle led to the Shang dynasty's fall and the Zhou's emergence as a dominant power. The Zhou introduced a feudal system, creating another hierarchical structure. At the base were the peasants, bound to the land and responsible for producing crops to sustain the empire. This system reinforced a rigid social order while centralizing authority at the top, reflecting the changing dynamics of governance in ancient China. At the base of the Zhou dynasty's social hierarchy were the peasants, whose primary role was to cultivate crops to sustain the empire. Above them were the soldiers, tasked with defending the lands from foreign threats. Next came the lords, who owned the land and collected a portion of the peasants' crops as taxes. In turn, the lords passed some of these crops to the king, the ultimate authority in the empire. This system allowed the king to amass significant wealth while the labor and toil of the masses supported the entire structure. Why did so many people resign themselves to a life of continuous farming and labor? Two main reasons explain this phenomenon. First, it was a matter of necessity. It required a large number of people to feed both an empire and their own families. Second, philosophy played a role. Toward the end of the Zhou dynasty, Eastern philosophies began to take shape. Confucius introduced a system known as Confucianism, which emphasized respect, loyalty, and responsibility in all relationships. A key concept of Confucianism is Li, which refers to rituals, customs, and manners that guide behavior and maintain order in society. At the same time, Laozi developed Taoism, derived from the word Tao, meaning the way or the path. Taoism teaches that individuals should align themselves with the natural flow of the universe rather than resisting it. Its philosophy encourages living in peace with oneself and avoiding unnecessary worries about external matters beyond one's control. Farmers were urged to focus on their work and live harmoniously. One of Taoism's most renowned concepts is yin and yang, symbolizing complementary and interdependent forces in nature, such as light and dark, hot and cold, or masculine and feminine. By balancing these forces, individuals could achieve harmony and fulfillment. Both Confucianism and Taoism provided a framework that made life more tolerable for ancient Chinese farmers. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, city-states began to grow and expand. By 800 BCE, the Greeks realized their land was largely infertile and incapable of sustaining essential grain production. To address this, Greek city-states turned to colonization, establishing settlements abroad to secure food supplies. At its height, the city-state of Miletus controlled over 90 colonies across Europe, producing food for the Greeks. Greek colonies stretched from present-day Marseille in France to parts of modern Ukraine and Russia. Amid this period of expansion, another emerging city-state was Rome. According to legend, twin brothers Romulus and Remus were abandoned by their parents and placed in a basket on the Tiber River. A she-wolf discovered the infants and nursed them back to hell. When the brothers grew up, they decided to establish a city at the location where the wolf had saved them. However, a dispute arose over naming the city, leading to a fierce conflict. Romulus eventually killed Remus and named the city Rome, founding it in 753 BCE. While Greek city-states were expanding their colonies, Cyrus the Great of Persia was preparing to build an empire. At the time, the Persians were under the rule of the Median Empire. According to legend, King Astyages of Media had a prophetic dream that his grandson, Cyrus, would one day overthrow him. Fearing this, Astyages ordered his chief advisor to kill the infant. Instead, the advisor secretly gave the baby to a shepherd to raise. However, Cyrus's troubles didn't end there. When he turned 10, Astyages discovered him again and, driven by fear of the prophecy, sought to kill him. Against his better judgment, Astyages allowed Cyrus to live, a decision that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Allowing Cyrus to live turned out to be King Astyages' greatest mistake. As an adult, Cyrus raised an army and led a revolt against his maternal grandfather. True to the prophecy, Astyages surrendered in 550 BCE. Cyrus's ambitions didn't stop there. He went on to conquer Babylon, becoming the supreme ruler of Mesopotamia and even extending his dominion to the Indus Valley civilization. With much of the known world under his control, Cyrus also seized the Greek colony of Ionia in Asia Minor, further solidifying the vast Persian Empire. However, Cyrus's death left the fate of his empire uncertain, paving the way for the rise of the next great Persian king, Darius the Great. Meanwhile, in Greece, several city-states were gaining prominence, with Sparta and Athens leading the charge. Sparta was renowned as a military powerhouse. The Spartans believed in the supremacy of physical strength and warfare. Newborns who were deemed unhealthy were abandoned, while young boys were taken from their families to undergo rigorous military training. This training included physical conditioning, weapons mastery, and survival under harsh conditions. For Spartans, life revolved entirely around preparing for and winning wars. Spartan society was divided into three distinct groups. At the top were the ruling aristocrats, who held political power. Below them were free non-citizens, who could not participate in government but were required to serve in the military. At the bottom were the helots, an enslaved population responsible for providing labor to sustain the Spartan state. Life in Sparta was harsh, militaristic, and disciplined. In contrast, Athens was experimenting with democracy, though it was a complex and chaotic system. Athenian democracy had two primary branches, the Council of 500 and the Assembly. The Council of 500 was formed through a process called sortition, where members were randomly selected. Athens was divided into 10 tribes, with each tribe contributing 50 citizens to serve on the council for 1 year. Eligible citizens were identified through personalized tokens inserted into a device called a globalization, a now lost mechanism involving tubes and balls to randomly select representatives. The Assembly, on the other hand, allowed every male citizen born in Athens or to Athenian parents to vote. Slaves and women were excluded. The Council of 500 set the agenda for the assembly, where up to 30,000 citizens could vote on matters such as laws, the appointment of generals, and government administration. To manage the chaos of such large gatherings, 9 presidents were randomly selected on the morning of each meeting to enforce order and rules. Their last-minute election made them nearly immune to bribery. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you can stay updated with our latest videos.